Hey there, welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show. This is a show that's dedicated to progressive rock, hard rock, heavy metal, and other forms of rock music. So this is our series. Our series is Rock Stars Who Thrilled Us But Have Since Passed On. Today is episode number 53 of 2015. Features two bass players. I think I did two drummers last time, but anyways, this features two bass players, both fairly notable in their own genre fields. Of course, I am a long-time huge fan of Yes, and Chris Squire was one of my favorite musicians, so that was a gimme. The other one I chose from among a whole whack of people, because I think he had a significant influence on the music that he was into. And we're talking about Lemmy Kilmiester, former of Hawkwind and Motorhead. Most notably for Motorhead, though, he put that kind of punky metal sound on the map, I think. It's funny that you get a guy from a space rock band who has more punk influence making a huge impact on a metal. Anyways, we're here to do those two today, and we will do those two, and then I have a fairly lengthy list of honorable mentions. Okay, so we're starting off with Chris Squire because, as you know, those who passed first go first. So Chris Squire was a bass player for the rock band Yes. He was born March the 4th, 1948 in Kingsbury, London, England. And he died June the 27th, 2015 at the age of 67 in Phoenix, Arizona in the USA. The music he was in was progressive rock, symphonic rock, and art rock. Basically, he was a bass player, but also a very good harmonic backing vocalist. He was active from 1965 until his death in 2015. Excuse me, sorry, starting to get tired. Anyways, just a brief history of him. He started with the Selfs in 1965. His trademark Rickenbacker bass 4001 also in 1965. He was with the Sin, and that band included Squire, Jackman, Martin Adelman, and Steve Nardelli, John Painter, and Juhal Hakarnarsson, I think that's it. It's this Finnish guy. Anyways, after several months, Painter was replaced by Peter Banks, who eventually became a member of Yes as well. They opened for Hendrix one time and released two singles before disbanding. In 1967, he joined the Maybelle Greer's Toy Shop, a psychedelic band which included Peter Banks, Clive Baylor, and Bob Hager. Shortly after that, he was introduced to John Anderson, and John Anderson basically said, "I'll join your band, but not with that name." So they decided to change the name to Yes, but before they did that, the three of them, at that point there was Peter Banks, Chris Squire, and then John Anderson. They decided to change the name to Yes, and they added Bill Bruford and Tony Kaye on the keyboards. And then they formed Yes. Okay, so he was the only member of Yes, of the original members of Yes, who played on every single Yes album up until his death. Heaven, what's the name of that album? Can't think of it. Anyways, since that time they've released The Quest and some live stuff too. So he hasn't been on a couple albums since then. I hate to say this, but to my viewpoint, when Chris Squire died, they should have probably ended the band, because really there's nobody left in the band that was in the band when they formed. There's nobody left. They're all gone. They're either dead or moved on to something else. And now that Alan White's gone, him and Steve Howe are the two next closest. Now White's gone, so that leaves really just Steve Howe, who came on the third album. But at any rate, basically how Yes operated was John Anderson did most of the lyric writing. I think he probably did all of the lyric writing. And then primarily 95% of the music writing was done by Steve Howe and Chris Squire, with the occasional help from Wakeman and some of the other band members. But basically those were the guys who wrote and wrote the music for Yes and throughout the years, and there was a point in time when John Anderson had left the band and Rick Wakeman was gone, that they changed their styles and brought in Trevor Rabin, who became a major influence in the band. So anyways, Chris Squire, basically known for his very frontal type bass playing. He was very forward in his bass playing, not really a background type bass player. I think he had difficulty early on in his career getting kind of session stuff because many musicians found his bass playing too dominating. So he wanted to, that's why they formed the band Yes, so that they could all expand on their own individual talents, which they did to the extreme. I think, arguably they are the most instrumentally diverse and band with ability of any progressive rock band that's ever been. Now, some might argue Rush, and some might argue ELP, maybe even King Crimson, but I personally think over the long haul, I think Yes was much more diverse in their musical pushing the envelope, so to speak. All of them were really good. Wakeman, Howe, Squire, Bruford, and then White, all really excellent musicians. Anyways, this isn't about Yes, this is about Chris Squire, and he was an integral part of that, and I was very sad the day that he passed away. To me, it marked the end of an era. Yes had been one of my favorite bands, and after his death, I don't really believe the band has done really justice to the name Yes since then. I mean, the Quest album isn't a bad album. It's got some good stuff on it, but it really isn't a Yes album. It doesn't really even sound too much like Yes. There's a little bit of it in the first track, but I think they'd be better off to just call that a Steve Howe solo album or something to that effect. There's not enough Jeff Downes on it. There's not enough of anything that's Yes-y on there. But anyways, Chris Squire, I think, meant a lot to a lot of progressive rock fans. Certainly was very influential towards a lot of bass players, and most of those bass players I like quite a bit as well. So, it's unfortunate, but he died of leukemia at the age of 67. I think fairly young for a guy. Now there's a lot of rock stars pushing 80, and anyways, sadly missed, but well respected Chris Squire. So on to the number 2 guy, Lemmy Kilmiester, affectionately just known as Lemmy. Lemmy was a different type. He started out as a roadie for Hendrix and the Nice and probably some other bands too, and then eventually he got a break. He auditioned for Hawkwind for a guitar player, and they decided they didn't want a second guitar player, but the bass player on the concert that night that he had auditioned didn't show up and left all of his equipment there. So Lemmy took the equipment and became the bass player for the band, playing with them for about 4 or 5 years. He actually has credit as being the lead singer on their biggest hit. So at one point, I guess they decided to let him go, and then the same year they let him go, he formed the band Motorhead with a couple of fairly unknown people at the time, and they played together. But then when they were out of the picture, he added Phil Taylor, or Filthy Animal if you prefer, and Fast Eddie Clark. And that became one of the greatest metal bands of all time. Hard to believe they're not in the Hall of Fame. They should be in there, just because they were groundbreaking, and a lot of stuff they did is they kind of had a punky rock sound. He was one of those, I always picture him, hair flying back with the microphone hanging down, pointing down, and him screaming into it. That's my vision of Lemmy. I actually saw Motorhead once. That was enough. I've been deaf ever since. Anyways, Filthy Animal also died the same year, and Fast Eddie Clark's gone. So all three original members, or all three of the big members, are gone. So even if they get inducted, there'd be nobody there to accept it. Unfortunate. But anyways, he died of cardiac arrhythmia that resulted in heart failure and prostate cancer. 4 days after his 70th birthday, I think it was. Yeah, 70th birthday. So a bit of a legend, I think, as far as many heavy metal people are concerned. He was one of the best. He had really, really distinctive voice. I don't think you could hear his voice and know it was anybody else. You had to say, oh, that's that guy from Motorhead, right? Yeah. So I liked him quite a bit, and I didn't mind. Their big hit was the Ace of Spades, but they also did The Chase is Better Than the Catch, all from that album in the early 80s. That's when they reached their peak, 80, 81. So there you have it. Motorhead, Lemmy Kilmiester, or just Lemmy if you prefer. We're all gone now, but a great rest in peace, Lemmy. I'm sure that peace isn't something he's looking for, but he's got to have it anyways. So now I'm going to just mention some of the honorable mentions. You'll have to excuse me. I've been working all day here, so I'm getting a bit tired. I hope my voice isn't too dried out. I won't crack too much. Anyways, we have, I've listed about, it looks like I've got about 20 some people here. It's a lot. Curtis Lee of Pretty Little Angel Eyes. The reason I mentioned him is because that song was one of the first rock songs I ever really liked. And it was him that sang it, and I didn't know that till today, actually. Dallas Tay of the CSNY. Edgar Froese of Tangerine Dream. You know, Edgar, he was the guy who was one of the founding members, the last original member of Tangerine Dream, who put out like 800 albums, man. It's unbelievable. David Maxwell of Blues Pianist, Jimmy Greenspoon of Three Dog Night. David Allen of Soft Machine and Gong. Mike Porcaro of Toto. If you remember, we recently did Jeff Porcaro. Bob Burns of Leonard Skinner. Percy Sledge, of course. Sorry, Percy Sledge. It's Perry Sledge. Guy LeBlanc of Camel. Bunny King of The Afters. Sorry, drew a blank there for a second. Craig Gruber of Elf, Rainbow, and Gary Moore. Errol Brown of Hot Chocolate. B.B. King, of course. Louis Johnson of the Johnson Brothers. Eric Rickson of Them and Thin Lizzy. Eddie Haw of the Mamas and the Papas, and also Monkees. He was a drummer for the two of them. Andy White of the Beatles. You're going to say, Beatles? I don't remember the Beatles having anybody other than Ringo Starr. Well, they had Pete Best before that, but Alan White filled in on one particular song for the Beatles, and then he was gone. Phil Taylor of Motorhead, of course, Filthy Animal, I mean, and Scott Weiland of the Stone Temple Pilots, and last but not least, Natalie Cole, great vocal singer and daughter of the late Nat King Cole. So there you have it. Those are our honorable mentions for tonight. So I hope you enjoy this episode. If you do, please like and subscribe. This is episode 53. We have the next episode 54, is a two-parter. I had 4 musicians, so I'm going to do it an A and a B part. And we're getting down to the end here, though. It's the last decade, well, almost the last decade, pretty close to it. Middle of the second last decade, we'll call it. It's been a long haul with a lot of very interesting things I learned. I picked up some stuff from doing this that I've been actually following, which is what the purpose of this is all about, right? Get to know and appreciate the music that we love so much. So anyways, like I said, I hope you enjoy this episode, so please subscribe, and we will see you later. Have a good night. Bye.